Let's get started with our first news. Khamzat is making waves again, and this time the talk is about a massive jump to light heavyweight. The idea of Khamzat stepping in with Alex Pereira has people across the fight world paying attention. Khamzat has made it clear he is more than willing to fight Alex next. And if that ever happens, some very respected voices believe he could walk out with even more gold. Recently, Khamzat called out Alex for a future showdown. And during an episode of the Pound for Pound show, Henry Cejudo broke down how this matchup could play out. Cejudo explained that Khamzat still has work to do at middleweight, including defending his belt. But once that happens, a move up to 205 pounds could make sense. In his view, Khamzat would first need to prove himself against a top light heavyweight contender before facing someone like Alex. Stylistically, Cejudo sees this as a great fight for Khamzat. He pointed to Khamzat's elite grappling, relentless top control, and intense pressure. According to Cejudo, those tools are exactly what you need against a dangerous striker like Alex. He also mentioned that Khamzat is incredibly disciplined and smart about where to take a fight. While talking about it with John Jones, Cejudo said Jones described Khamzat as having freakish strength. Khamzat is a big, powerful athlete, roughly the same size and height as Alex. Add in the wrestling, the control, and that non-stop intensity, and Cejudo strongly favors Khamzat if the fight ever goes down. Still, reality might slow things down. Khamzat hasn't defended his middleweight title yet, and Alex has been chasing bigger legacy fights of his own. So for now, this is a super fight that lives in the future. But if the paths ever cross, many believe Khamzat has the tools to change everything. Move on to another news. Islam Makhachev has reacted to the growing controversy around Michael Morales and his professional record, and the champion did not hold back. Morales has long been promoted as an undefeated fighter, but that label briefly disappeared when Topology updated his record to show a loss from 2017. The bout in question took place on an Ecuadorian reality TV show, where Morales was reportedly choked out. That update instantly caused shock across the MMA community. After the change, Morales fired back on social media, pushing against the idea that the fight should count as a professional loss. Shortly after, Sherdog stepped in and announced that his record would not be changed. According to Sherdog, their team had reviewed the footage years ago and determined that the match took place in an exhibition setting, not a sanctioned pro bout. Jay Petrie from Sherdog explained that those tape-delayed reality show fights would not be listed as professional contests. Eventually, Topology reversed course as well and restored Morales' undefeated status. But by then, the story had already gained traction, and that is when Islam Makhachev added his voice to the situation. Speaking with Match TV, Makhachev made it clear he was not impressed with how things played out. He said Morales was not undefeated a few days ago, but suddenly he is again. Makhachev pointed out that he saw the footage himself and watched Morales get choked out inside a cage. Then, according to him, it was suddenly labeled an exhibition. Makhachev ended his comments with a line that felt like a warning shot, saying that if it was an exhibition, then Morales needs to be choked out again. That statement instantly grabbed attention. Coming from the lightweight champion, it sounded less like commentary and more like a promise. There is already a strong belief that Makhachev and Morales could end up crossing paths at some point in the future. Morales is currently 7-0 in the UFC and coming off a huge win over Sean Brady. He is ranked number 4 in the welterweight division and is seen as one of the most dangerous rising contenders in the sport. The old reality show fight from nearly a decade ago is not going to change how the UFC views him, nor will it affect his momentum. Makhachev, however, clearly believes that real fights should speak for themselves. In his eyes, a loss is a loss, no matter where it happens. And if these two ever meet inside the octagon, the champ has already made it clear that he plans to leave no doubt. Move on to another news. As UFC 324 gets closer, the tension between Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett keeps building. Paddy has been telling everyone that he plans to stand and strike with Gaethje, but Justin is not buying it for a second. In fact, he is convinced that before this fight is over, Paddy will be forced to shoot for takedowns and turn into a wrestler. Gaethje is widely seen as one of the most dangerous strikers in the lightweight division. Because of that, the general belief is that Paddy's smartest path to victory would be on the mat. Many of Paddy's biggest wins have come by submission, not by trading bombs in the center of the cage. Still, when speaking with TNT Sports, Paddy doubled down on his confidence. He said he is going to keep it on the feet, that there is a blueprint to beat Gaethje, and that Max already showed how to do it. Paddy added that everyone underestimates his striking and expects him to wrestle, but he insists he is not coming in just to take Gaethje down. He even pointed out that Gaethje had a brutal war with Michael Chandler and claimed he would piece Chandler up. Not long after that, Gaethje responded while speaking with the New York Post. He said he does not really listen to talk like that and prefers to let the fight do the talking. Gaethje promised that he is going to turn Paddy into a wrestler. He admitted Paddy is dangerous and commits fully to his power shots, but he also believes Paddy leaves himself open. According to Gaethje, at this level, mistakes get punished, and he plans to use his experience and technical skills to capitalize when those openings appear. Beyond the fight itself, there is still a lot of debate about why Paddy is fighting for the interim lightweight belt instead of Arman. That conversation goes back to Arman's late withdrawal from UFC 311. Gaethje was asked about the situation and said that Arman is probably more deserving on paper. However, he explained that pulling out of a title fight does not make the UFC happy, especially when they have invested huge money, time, and resources into promoting the event. Gaethje added that if the injury was serious, then of course it is out of the fighter's control. But when someone backs out at the last minute, it creates problems for everyone involved. It seems clear that the UFC and Dana White were far from pleased with how that situation unfolded. Now with Gaethje and Paddy set to collide for interim gold, all eyes are on whether Gaethje can do exactly what he said: turn Paddy into a wrestler and leave no room for doubt about who belongs at the top of the division. Move on to another news. Last week, we talked about Sean Strickland running into Nick Diaz at an MMA gym, and the two exchanging a few heated words. This time, though, the energy was very different. At the UFC Performance Institute, Sean Strickland crossed paths with Paddy Pimblett, and what followed was more laughs than tension. The two instantly started joking about how out-of-shape fighters can look right after a bout. Strickland joked about walking into the gym and not even recognizing Paddy at first. He laughed and said he thought, "Who the hell is that guy?" Paddy fired right back with the same energy, pointing at Sean and saying he had the exact same reaction. It was clear there was no beef, just two fighters having a good laugh at each other's expense. They started talking about how much weight they had both dropped since the last time they sparred. Paddy admitted he had lost around 18 pounds and still had more to go. Sean said he was down about 20 to 30 pounds himself, mostly bunch of fat, as he put it, joking about being undisciplined when it comes to food after fights. Both of them laughed about how easy it is to fall off the routine once the pressure of a fight camp is gone. Paddy explained that when they last trained together, he was close to 200 pounds. Since then, he has already dropped around 30 pounds and is still working to get back into peak shape. Sean nodded along, agreeing that it takes real discipline to get back on track after you let yourself enjoy life a little too much. The conversation then shifted into something more personal. Sean told Paddy that he actually keeps up with his life outside the cage. He said he sees Paddy with his kids and that it genuinely makes him happy. He called them cute and said it is cool to see fighters enjoying family life when they are not in fight mode. Paddy smiled and thanked him, clearly appreciating the respect. The whole exchange showed a side of both men that fans do not always get to see. Instead of trash talk or intensity, it was all about humor, honesty, and mutual respect. Two fighters at different points in their careers, joking about weight cuts, discipline, and the reality of life after the cage. Moments like this remind people that behind the tough personas and violent sport, these guys are still just humans who laugh, joke, and relate to each other. At the UFCPI, it was not about fights or rankings. It was just Sean Strickland and Paddy Pimblett being real, sharing a moment, and keeping the vibe light and positive. Move on to another news. Conor has set the MMA world on fire with some wild comments he made during a recent live stream. While jumping on a random Roblox stream of all places, Conor revealed what could be huge news about his UFC future. According to him, his current contract with the UFC, which still had 2 fights left on it, is now essentially void. Conor explained that the reason comes down to the new UFC and Paramount deal. With pay-per-views reportedly no longer being part of that structure, he says his old contract no longer applies because it was based on pay-per-view points. Conor reminded everyone that he is the highest-generating pay-per-view fighter of all time, and because that model is gone, he believes he is now due for a completely new deal. He went on to say that he is heading into negotiations with the UFC in February and that he is very interested in what comes next. Conor also made it clear that he is locked in on training. He said he is living in the gym, focusing on his health, his rest, and listening to his coaches. He talked about blocking out all external noise and keeping his internal dialogue strong. According to Conor, he is showing his kids and his team what it means to truly live and breathe the fight life. During the stream, Conor even mentioned warming up for a potential White House event, saying that he would love to be part of something like that. He described the new media deal as being worth billions and claimed the UFC has multiplied its value massively. In his mind, all of this sets the stage for him to negotiate from a position of power. Now, if what Conor is saying turns out to be true, the implications are enormous. It would mean he is effectively a free agent. That opens the door to the possibility of him fighting under his own promotion, BKFC, or signing a massive short-term deal with the UFC before making a move elsewhere. This could also help explain why Dana White reportedly shut down the idea of Conor versus Michael Chandler for the White House card. If the contract situation is unclear, the UFC might not want to move forward until everything is locked in. For now, though, everything should be taken with caution. Conor is known for making big claims, and until we hear something official from Dana White or the UFC, nothing is set in stone. Still, the fact that Conor is talking about void contracts, new negotiations, and billion-dollar deals makes this one of the most interesting storylines in MMA right now. Move on to another news. Ever since the UFC announced a historic White House event for June 14th, fans have been speculating non-stop about how stacked the card could be and which stars will appear. But based on recent comments from Merab, it sounds like one entire group of fighters may be left out. During an interview, Merab revealed that the UFC told him he is next in line for a title shot and that a trilogy with Petr Yan is absolutely happening. However, he also said the UFC made it clear that this fight will not take place at the White House event. The reason, according to Merab, is simple. Yan is Russian, and because of that, the matchup is considered impossible for that location. If that rule applies broadly, it would mean that no Russian fighters would be allowed to compete on the White House card. That could rule out several top names across multiple divisions and instantly changes how this event might look. Meanwhile, longtime UFC commentator John Anik shared what he thinks the ideal lineup should be. He said the card should be headlined by a heavyweight title fight and suggested Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. He also floated the idea of Petr Yan versus Merab in a co-main event, plus multiple undisputed title fights to make the night feel truly historic. But with the Russian issue in play, that vision starts to fall apart. And even outside of that, there are still major questions. Aspinall is coming off serious eye surgeries and may not even be ready by June. John Jones versus Alex Pereira would be a massive fight, but Dana White has already said he cannot rely on Jones, and that bout is not being planned. Another wild card is Conor. Any card with Conor on it instantly becomes the biggest show of the year. But Dana recently said the UFC is no longer looking at Michael Chandler as his opponent, and Chael Sonnen added more fuel to the fire. Sonnen said Conor will never make 155 again, and that if the UFC brings him back, it will be for a big check and against a real opponent who can stick around for multiple fights. Sonnen also dismissed names like Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal, saying the UFC would not spend that kind of money just for a one-off nostalgia fight. In his view, if Conor returns, it will be for something serious, or he may not return at all. So now the White House card sits in a strange place. With possible restrictions on Russian fighters, uncertainty around John Jones, Aspinall's health, and Conor's future, the UFC still has a lot to figure out. One thing is clear, though. Whatever ends up happening on June 14th, the promotion wants this night to feel historic, elite, and unforgettable. Move on to another news. Nick Diaz is finally back home and back in the gym, and he is already dropping knowledge. During a recent training session, Nick was working on bottom escapes alongside Jake Shields. After class, the conversation turned to the fight between Islam Makhachev and JDM, and Nick did not hold back when breaking down what went wrong. Nick said that he does not feel sorry for JDM because learning how to get up from the bottom is a basic part of fighting. In his view, JDM failed to understand why he was being controlled. Nick explained that when a black belt is passing your guard and holding you down, you cannot just accept it. You have to systematically understand what is happening and how to stop it. Nick pointed out that Islam is not the kind of fighter who rushes to pass and tap someone out. Instead, Islam stays heavy on top and controls you, round after round. According to Nick, the real question is why JDM allowed himself to be stuck there for so long. He said this was a guy with 0 losses, fighting in a 5-round title fight against one of the best in the world, and he still did not adjust. Nick talked about leverage being the key. He said the knee is the leverage. You insert the knee, you break the position down piece by piece, and then you work the arm underneath to start escaping. He was frustrated watching round after round where JDM did not execute those fundamentals. From Nick's perspective, it was not about toughness or heart. It was about technique, awareness, and discipline under pressure. He said that at the highest level, you cannot make the same mistake over and over again and expect things to change. You have to solve the problem in real time. Nick's breakdown was blunt, but it came from experience. He has been in those deep waters, and he knows how small details decide big fights. In his eyes, JDM had the tools, but he did not use them the right way when it mattered most. And that, more than anything else, is what cost him against Islam Makhachev.